Hi guys, this is gonna be a casual recording, pretty laid back recording. So basically what I'm going to talk about is what I feel about turning 25. So it's the 25th of Feb today, but this video is probably gonna go up later on this week as I edit it. Yeah, so what I think about being 25. 25 is a weird age. Well, I'd say 18, 20 or 21, 25, 30. They're weird ages because you're supposed to, say, meet certain milestones in your life. I still feel the same person as I did when I was, say, 15 or when I was much younger. Like, as you get older, you never actually feel any different, except for the fact that maybe if you start feeling the aches and pains of getting older because of the health conditions that you naturally get when you get older, right? So and yeah, depending on how well you take care of yourself and your body during when you're aging. 25 is a weird age because you're supposed to be around that age, or your mid-20s. You're supposed to have your career figured out, right? And which is not necessarily true, right? You don't necessarily have to have your career figured out in your 20s. But back then, say 30, 40 years ago, by your 20s, you were supposed to have, finished school. You're supposed to have bought a house, have a job, have a family, that American dream, or maybe the Australian dream. But you were supposed to have everything set out, and that was the definition of success. If you can achieve that, then you're fairly successful. Nowadays, it's a lot harder. There's more opportunities. I'm not saying that. Well, in some sense, in some scenarios, the opportunity that we have nowadays allows it to be easier to reach further success in today's society. But it's also a lot harder because there's a lot more competition, and also the houses weren't as expensive back then than they are now. So house prices are just going up, and our salaries can't pretty much compete with the income of people hasn't risen as much as the price of the cost of living, right? But the thing is, nowadays a lot of people, in their 20s, they focus on who they are as a person, and there's been a shift to sort of one road path where you had to have a specific career in a company and then build your way up in that company. Nowadays, a lot of people are taking the time in their 20s to figure who they are as a person, and then that basically sets them up in their 30s. But I can't speak from experience because I'm not 30 yet, but I'm basically in the phase where they say to take a lot of risks, take a lot of risks because you can afford to take a lot of risks in your 20s, but then in your 30s, it's like you can't afford as much to do, as you can't afford to take as many risks in your 30s, because when you take risks in your 30s, you might have a family at that point, and you also got to consider providing for your family at the same time as well. So that's a lot harder. So doing riskier things aiming higher in it, say if you want to make a business or something like that, aiming for that aiming for those goals is a much riskier thing, but because you're in your 20s and you have nothing to lose, it's far better to do so. Anyways, being sidetracked. So, being 25, the difference I feel from being 25 to from being 20 and being 15 and being 10, right? So 10, basically, as a 10-year-old, you're ignorant. You basically don't know anything as much as you do at 25. You're still the same person. You still have similar aspirations, and then when you grow older, you gain more knowledge. So when I was 10, actually, to think about it, my memory from being a 10-year-old is very vague. Yeah. Some people can remember exactly what they did as a 10-year-old, but for me, it's fairly, very vague. So, I still feel the same person. There's no magical difference between how I was when I was, say, 15, 20. I still have the same insecurities, same similar passions to what I did back then. But as you gain more knowledge and as you explore more things, you gain more interests, right? And your anxieties are still there, but you learn how to cope with it, and you have better tools. I like to think about it as we're all scared, right? We're all scared little kids, but when we get older, we just learn better ways. We gain tools to help us cope with life in general. But as a kid, we have to rely on parents to provide for us, and we have to rely on their support. And then when we get older, we sort of rely on ourselves and our own abilities to parent ourselves, because when we're older, there's not so much of someone else giving us discipline or parenting us. So there's no one to tell us off when we do something wrong, or we do, if we slack off or anything. So we have to sort of be able to do that ourselves, because no one's just going to tell us off if we did something wrong, right? So yeah, that's you still, if you, the only reason why you feel more of an adult, and the only reason why you feel like you're more grown, is because you've experienced more, and those experiences have made you learn more things about yourself and learn more things around. It made you learn more about the world around and how to cope with our external environment, right? So yeah, it's the skills that you learn. You basically become more independent as you get older, but you still have certain areas where it's without your comfort zone, so you don't want to explore it just of yet. But then that's when, as you get older, you try to experience and push yourself outside your comfort zone, and you're more comfortable in accomplishing things outside your circle of comfort, right? So 25, I just finished uni last year. Well, I finished all my subjects, but I still need to do my internship component of that, and then still need to graduate. So yeah, I still haven't graduated. If you guys are wondering if I have graduated, not yet, but I have finished all my subjects. But now I'm just, taking it easy. But I'm still working, but I'm taking it easy because pretty much felt like I burnt myself out last year. So yeah, in your 20s, you pretty much try to figure out what you want to do in life, and a lot of the times, a lot of people in their 20s, even in their teens, right, they have no idea of what to do, right? when I started my course, I did that partly because I wanted to. I partly studied robotics, mechatronics, and computer science because it led from wanting to make games, right? So initially in high school, I remember there was some classes that we used the program Game Maker, and then we made some small one of those shooter games and those platform games, right? So we did that, and it sort of led me into the interest of I want to program games, right? And then came around the year 12. We were finishing our assessments, and then we had to sort of decide which path we wanted to pursue. And then with the list of courses that I selected, I selected computer science and robotics at Swinburne, and then Melbourne. I think I selected a Bachelor of Science, and yeah, I selected other engineering courses from various universities as well. But then on the back burner, I was actually thinking of engineering as a backup, but the primary course was computer science because I wanted to develop games, right? But then when I started the course, it ended up that my robotics side of things became my primary the primary degree, and then the computer science side was sort of the back burner, and yeah, so the first 2 years I kind of slacked off at uni because I pushed myself really hard at year 12 just to get the results, just to get me to the point where I can actually be accepted into the subject from those universities, right? Because there was a cutoff. They have this thing called ATAR score, so that's your entrance score to the subject, and the ATAR score is based on it's not necessarily based on the difficulty of the subject, but it's based on the demand. So the difficulty of the subject can be really, really hard, but then if the demand is not that high, then the ATAR score for that subject can be much lower. But then if you got like a prestige university, you could have like a higher ATAR score for that, because a lot more students want to get into that university, and then that subject that they're offering might be a lot easier than another university offering a harder subject, but then there's less demand for that subject. So the ATAR score is not necessarily doesn't necessarily state how difficult the subject is. It does state how well you did in accordance to your cohort of that year, because the ATAR is basically your ranking between other students in the state. Or actually, it used to be the state, but now it's the whole Australia, right? So yeah, so basically when I was playing, when I got basically when I got my offer. So basically when I got my offer, So basically when I got my offer, I was pretty much burnt out year 12, and I decided just to relax, because a lot of the subjects in first year of my uni, they were offering the same, of the units that they were offering had the same subjects that I learned in year 12, and so that's why it was fairly easy, and I was thinking, I can pretty much relax and not do so much, because the subjects were pretty easy, which is sort of I regret doing, because that behavior sort of led on to the next year and the next year after that, where I just didn't focus too much, because I was thinking, I studied this previously, I don't have to focus that much. But then the thing is, the difficulty quickly increases and next thing you know, you're underwater, and you're pretty much drowning from the information overload, right? So yeah, so the last few years, because what ended up happening was some of the subjects I failed, I had to redo them and all that. So I was thinking like my GPA wasn't that great, right? So how am I supposed to find, say, like a job after I graduate if my GPA isn't that great and I don't have experience? So I essentially, like one of my friends, he referred me to this group at uni, and it's called the SAE team. So what it stands for is Society of Automotive Engineers, and with my university they had an electric car racing team, and yeah, I learned a lot from that organization, and essentially that experience from that organization, like I wouldn't say that I was that good, but it taught me a lot. At that point, I still felt fairly behind, and I still felt that I didn't have the skills that I needed, right? But the thing is that the skills that I learned from there, so that was basically like electronics prototyping and yeah, mostly electronics prototyping, and I did some welding, some TIG welding and MIG welding. But yeah, so some of that experience sort of helped me got my next, like my first job related to my degree. The first job that I got related to my degree was not, I didn't find that job through applying. I basically found that job through it was basically a party that a family party that I went to, and this guy from church, we just started talking about our interests, and then I just started talking about how I did certain things in the SAE team, and started showing him what I was working on and all that. So he was fairly interested with that. He wasn't even disclosing what he actually did for a profession as well, but then I was just showing him what I was working on, and then he found that fairly interesting. So then he told me, do you want to have a look around the place that I work at? And he's basically, he has his own shop where, like, at his house, so he has all the tools that he needs for electronics and 3D printing, and yeah, he's got some tool a lot of he's got a lot of equipment at his place. And then yeah, so I went to his place, and then he was currently working on a project, and then that project is what I'm currently working on now. But so essentially I started working with him on that project for this client, and then after that the project became really big, but then so the requirements of that project became large, that they decided to just transfer it to the other person that was working on it, because the guy that I initially worked for, he had so many other clients that he didn't have the time to focus on that project, so he just gave it to his co-worker, and then I started working under his co-worker. And yeah, so that's basically the story up till now, where I'm just working for with that guy, and yeah, I pretty much enjoy what I'm doing, because creating things, sometimes it's exhausting, because the thing is, they said that creative work, you can do creative work, but you can only do it for like a couple of hours for like, say, a day or something, and then if you keep doing deep creative work, because programming is deep creative work. If you keep doing deep creative work, then you can experience mental exhaustion. So you kind of have to give yourself a break at times, right? So yeah. Anyways, So I find that when you're younger, right, because less people think that you're capable of less things, they give you less things to do, and therefore you don't. Young people, they learn really quickly because they have so much time and their minds are like sponges. But the thing that I found was I've actually learned a lot faster recently than I did when I was much younger, because the thing is when you take on more responsibility, people start to trust you more, that you can take more responsibility, and they give you more responsibility, and therefore your workload increases, and then it just keeps climbing, and then when you get to a point where you're stressed out and you get burnt out, right? That happens to a lot of people. They just get burnt out because they have so much responsibility, and they're at a point of their career where their job just demands too much of them, and they've climbed the ladder so much that they're at a point where they get paid a lot for their job, but because the reason why they get paid for a lot for their job is because their job is so stressful that no one else wants to do it, right? So the thing is, I think as we get older, the reason why they say that it's harder to learn things is, it's not that it's harder to learn things, it's more so that we're a lot more busier, so that we don't have enough time to spend to learn new things. When you're younger, the school times are structured for you to learn new things, right? You're basically you're basically in an environment where you're supposed to learn, whilst when you're older, you're in an environment to actually, do something monotonous every single day, right? And you have no extra time to learn something new, because unless you're in a field like engineering or something creative where you're making something new every day, then you're gonna keep learning every day. You're gonna keep learning new things, right? Or if you're like an entrepreneur, you pretty much have to learn every day, because you have to learn the skills to maintain a business, right? And you have to learn multiple skills, have multiple hats, right? So I would say that when you get older, you sort of have to learn a lot more things than when you're much younger. But the thing is, another thing is, at 25, things are actually much more difficult than it was when you were 15, or when I was 15, 12. Like, I thought everything was the reason why we think that our situation is hard is because we never experienced anything harder than our situation, right? But then whenever we get older, we experience more harder things, and we realize, what was I complaining about? When I was much younger, everything that was so much easier. And then now that you're older, you're like, wow, I want to go back. Right? That's the reason why a lot of older people wish that they were young again, because it was, back then, it was the easy times, right? Now, that happens because the thing is, the difficulty of life is a constant, like it's constantly increasing anyway, because you're a kid, you have less responsibilities. In your 20s, you have more responsibilities, you go to uni, you learn things, and you get a career and all that. And then in your 30s, you have to have, you have your career, but you also have a family to support. You also have your parents to support, because they were supporting you initially when you were growing up, and now you have to support them. So now you're the breadwinner of the family, and then so everything becomes more harder. And then when you're in your 40s, then health issues come up, and then as you get older, well, it depends on the person, and I wouldn't say that, you know, this would be true for everyone. Like some people, they might have reached a certain age and then they became successful and then everything was easier at that point. But no one is going to say that, you know, that life got easier when they got older, right? Like even the successful people, even no matter how successful they got, right, things still became a lot harder for them because from more success created more responsibility, and then therefore they had to work harder to maintain that level of success, right? But that's the thing. The reason why older people can cope and younger people, you know, younger people think that it's harder for them, while older people actually have it harder, is because it's what you call perception, right? You know, as you get older, your perception changes, and anything that you found that was hard when you were younger is now easy. Like at one point we all thought that spelling was fairly difficult, and doing your times tables and maths was fairly difficult, and then as you get older it becomes second nature because you practice it so much. Well, besides maths, some people still are pretty bad at maths, which I'm probably one of them. Like maths as in mental maths, doing it in your head and all that. And I guess that's the reason why they have calculators, because you know, like what's the point of technology if you don't use it, right? So yeah, anyways, I'm rambling on anyway. So, but yeah, so everything becomes harder as you get older, but the thing that goes up, so difficulty goes higher, but the thing that goes higher as well when you're getting older is your experience and the tools that you have to help you cope with the difficulties. So the reason why a lot of older people are able to maintain happiness and able to maintain their stress levels is because as the difficulties are getting more difficult and getting harder, they become better as a person. They become stronger. It's like the analogy that I like to use often is like weightlifting, right? Every time you carry a heavy weight, it's going to get heavier, right? And every time you go to that next level, it becomes heavier. So you can look back at your past self and say to your younger self, oh, why were you complaining about, you know, this small weight when now I'm carrying like a large sum of weight, right? But that's because your ability to cope with that weight has increased as well. Your strength has grown proportionate to how much weight you can carry, right? So that's the same thing as the difficulties in life. Like when you get older, things get more difficult, but the ratio of how you cope with it grows in proportion. Like your ability to cope with the difficulties grows in proportion to the level of difficulty that you're currently experiencing in life, right? And you know, like sure it's bad to have difficulties in life, but it's actually a good blessing, because if everything was easy and if everything in life was easy, then no one would work hard to try to achieve things, and we would take things all for granted and become complacent, right? It's the danger is in complacency. When people become complacent, that's when people become lazy, and you know, that's when they don't achieve anything, is because they become complacent, right? The times when America was growing the greatest was during the times when they had the most you know, conflict. I'm not saying that, you know, the conflict was good, but they grew the most when they had a lot of conflict, right? But when everything was peaceful, everyone started to, you know, become more complacent, and then, you know, the level of of growth has sort of flatlined, right? Like we still have certain achievements and certain technical advancements, right? But you know, the times where we're put in a pressure cooker, that's when the times when we grow the quickest, right? So take all the, you know, the bad things that happen in your life. Like, this is what I would say to my younger self, right? I would say to my younger self to take all the bad things in your life and use that to push you forward, to propel you forward to grow quicker, instead of being, you know, instead of blaming others, or instead of being complacent, or instead of having that victim mindset, because that's what will prevent you from growing, right? Because human nature, we tend to get stuck in a rut, and then when we get stuck in a rut, we're like, you know, why is this all happening to me? And then instead of trying to fight back against all the, you know, the pressures, and, you know, trying to accomplish things, right, with the pressures, we just let the pressure crush us, instead of we let the pressure turn us into dust instead of turning us into diamonds, right? So yeah, that's what. So I'm still, you know, I'm basically talking to myself, because there's still areas in my life that I'm still developing as well. Like I said, I still have those same anxieties as I was as a kid, though I'm slowly, gradually gaining the tools that I need to sort of cope with those anxieties and those fears and those, you know, the obstacles that are stopping me from progressing. I'm still trying to, you know, deal with those as well, right? Anyways, yeah, that's my take on being 25 and just turning 25. Yeah. I guess when I get to 30, then I'll probably have different things to talk about. But yeah, at this stage of life, it's pretty much you're not going to be where you thought you were going to be. Because I thought I was going to be finished uni like at 21, 22, and I just finished at 24, right? Yeah. And the thing is, if I failed some subjects, and if I got discouraged, I would have dropped out of uni and said, I'm going to give up, right? But then I was thinking, you know, the failure mindset is basically giving up. So, you know, even if it took me a long time to finish my degree, I still pushed to complete it, because, you know, it's an accomplishment. Like, if I can finish this degree, right, like, a degree doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be successful, right? But my ability to finish something that I started is probably more telling for success, because what generally makes people successful is not their abilities, but their capability to withstand pain and be able to push till the end and persist and finish what they started. And once they achieve what they wanted to achieve, that's when they will gain success. But when that one step before success, when they give up, that's when they fail, because they gave up that one step before they reached success, because they got discouraged and they said, it's too hard, I'm just going to quit. And that's how they fail, right? Because success is always like around the corner. It's always that one step extra that you have to take before you're about to, you know, crumble under the pressure, right? Yeah. So 20s, yeah. Like, I know I'm only in my 20s, and yeah, there's a lot of like, I'm only 25, and I may not have all the experience to talk about, success and all that, because by other people's definition, I haven't reached it yet. But you can say that, the small accomplishments in life, adding on top of each other, you can also call them successes and accomplishments. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're wealthy already, but like other accomplishments that you've accomplished, you can pretty much talk about it, right? So I'm not qualified to talk about being a successful entrepreneur because I haven't reached that yet, but I would say that this is how I sort of survived through uni, and this is how throughout my life, it's sort of like how I coped with achieving things. Like, I would always feel like I'm far behind, and I'd always feel that I wasn't good enough, but I always kept trying, right? Like a lot of subjects I failed at uni, but then the first time I did it, I failed it, and the second time I didn't, I got either a distinction or high distinction. And the thing is, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't try it. So for me, naturally, I'm not talented in anything. The reason why I may seem talented in certain things is because I'm just willing to try for longer periods and try harder, right? So, and that's the thing. That's the reason why I burnt myself out last year, and I'm just learning it now that it's also good to take breaks, because last year I almost burnt myself out, and luckily, everything's now, like, I've finished everything now, and I'm sort of relaxing. I'm still working, but yeah, I might talk about burnout in another video. But yeah, sometimes if you have that personality, or if you do, the people that do have the persistence, and the people that do keep trying, and the people that keep having persistence, right? Those type of people, what ends up happening with them is they end up burning themselves out if they don't know how to take proper care of themselves, or if they don't know how to properly give themselves rest, because you can be too persistent, that you push yourself too much, and that beyond what your body is capable of. And I almost did that last year. So now I think they said that if you're too stressed, your gut bacteria starts dying out, because there's just something that happens with your gut bacteria. You disrupt your gut microbes, right? And that's when you get digestive problems, and when you're stressed out, you tend to get digestive problems, and then you get sick, and then you can't focus properly, right? So it's another thing about health, where I mentioned in the video where I talk about why learning is difficult, that because it has to do with your health as well, right? Your physiology. Now, if you're stressed out, and if you're pushing yourself too much, what can happen is you can stress your body out too much, that you're losing the nutrients that you lose more nutrients, and then you become nutrient deficient, because your body is consuming more of those nutrients because of your stress, right? Therefore, you have to consume more of more vitamins, more nutrients, more minerals, and all that, and probiotics and all that. But yeah, because you stressed out too much, then you get to a tipping point where you get past that tipping point, and then when you pass that tipping point, everything just goes downhill, because you start getting sick and you can't focus anymore. So the thing is, sometimes with the hustle environment, or the hustle culture that we are living in today, sometimes that could be toxic as well. So it's not that you you don't hustle, right? It's that you hustle, but you take breaks. You take proper breaks so that you can recover, right? It's kind of like the story where there's two axemen that's cutting down two separate trees, right? Because they're in a competition, and then one axeman would keep cutting down his tree with his axe, right? And then the other axeman would sit down occasionally, and he would just sit down and take a break, right? And then the axeman that kept cutting down the tree, he kept staring at the axeman that kept sitting down for every interval of times, right? And then eventually, what ended up happening was the axeman that cut down the tree, the axeman that took frequent breaks, he actually cut down the tree quicker than the axeman that was cutting constantly. And then the axeman that was cutting down the tree constantly, he was thinking to himself, wait, how did that guy cut down the tree quicker when he was taking more frequent breaks than I was, and I was just constantly keep cutting, and then he sat down every few hours or so, and for me, I was just kept on cutting, and then you know what the other axeman told him? He said that the reason why he was able to cut down his tree quicker was because every time he took a break, every time he sat down, he was basically sharpening his axe blade, right? And that's the reason why he was able to cut down the tree faster, was because every time he was cutting down the tree, the blade of the axe was always sharp, while the guy that kept on cutting down the tree and didn't actually take a break, his axe started to become blunt, and it became more blunt over time. Therefore, its effectiveness wasn't as good as the sharpened axe, right? So it's an analogy that, yeah. So basically, if your body is running in running order, then it could run a lot more efficient, and you can probably do, like, say, 10 times the amount of work in one day than if you're running sluggish and for 10 days, right? So yeah, your efficiency is also as important as your hustle, right? So if your health is compromised, then your efficiency will be compromised, and therefore, even if you hustle too much, you're not going to run at optimum level, and therefore you'll actually be less effective as someone who has been well rested and has all the energy. Yeah, but it's not always possible, because sometimes in the real world, you've got hectic schedules, and you're probably the only person who has the capabilities of doing that job, and that's why you have to do overtime, because you're required to do that job because no one else can do it. So you're pretty much forced to do overtime and overwork yourself, which that's why it's questioning whether or not is that job right for you. Do you want to stay in that job, or do you want to sort of find a job that is more balanced for you, and where you can also consider your health, and at the same time also focus on hustling and focus on building what you want to build, right? But primarily you want to focus on your health, because your body is the vehicle in which you're going to use to achieve success, right? And if your vehicle is not running properly, then you can't achieve it. Anyways, that is basically my long-winded as take from what my take was for being 25. Yeah, and just cascade to different areas. But yeah, anyways, hope you like this video. Put a thumbs up if you do. Please subscribe if you like this video, and if you want more videos like this in the future. For those new to my channel, I do videos on self-development and my journey through life, and I'll also be doing videos on what I do as a profession, so robotics and mechatronics and computer science. So I might do tutorials as well, and also I do videos on me freelancing, so what I do as a freelancer. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next video.